Hello, welcome back. So we are going to continue to read novel Lord of the Mysteries, Volume 1 Clown by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. Last time we read chapters, I think, up to 87. Yes. So what happened was client sensed there was something wrong with Selena's magic mirror divination, and he performed a ritualistic magic to clear whatever was wrong with her, and he talked to Elizabeth about not doing anything dangerous again. So it was all resolved, I think. Okay, so let's continue with chapter 88, report. What is it? Benson asked casually. Melissa looked at her brother with a serious expression because she felt that Client's behavior tonight was strange as well. It only took, in fact, it only took slightly more normal than Elizabeth's behavior and later Selena's. Client chuckled as he had long thought of an excuse and said, there was a mistake in one of the document descriptions, and I already informed my colleagues that I would hand it over to them when I arrive early in the company tomorrow morning. So I can either amend it now since it's on the way or wake up at least half an hour earlier tomorrow morning. No doubt I have chosen to do the former. Ah, no wonder I had a nagging feeling that your mind wasn't in the game. You were actually thinking about work. Benson smiled, suddenly enlightened. No, I apologize. I should say the card game to help you think. All right, we shall wait for you. Melissa looked away and smoothed out the ruffles of her engagements. I really don't know that word. As it was past the operations time for both track and trackless public carriages, the three siblings bid their first farewell before hiring a carriage nearby. It took two solely for 45 minutes. I've heard that every carriage driver that rents out their own carriage adds ridiculous fees, Benson complained in a low voice. He had used most of the money he had won earlier to pay the driver. Client smiled and replied, I think it's very acceptable. After all, it's almost 11 o'clock. I was just joking. I thought we would actually share the carriage with other guests. 45 minutes can take us to many places. Benson looked out of the window at the other people who were hiring carriages one after another. I know, ride sharing. Client rubbed at the top of his silver inlaid walking stick and said, we don't have a problem with that, but the other customers might. Benson, did you notice that they care a lot about their image and at looking respectable? I think that might be common amongst the middle class. Hmm. Benson nodded seriously and said, the Wood family was much more extravagant than I imagined. However, the Wood's weekly salary is only £4 per week. Looking respectable might be a biggest difference between middle class people and curly haired baboons. Do you have something against curly haired baboons? Klein almost burst out laughing. Melissa didn't join in their discussion. She took a seat and sized up Klein from time to time. Her gaze was sending chills down her spine. The two-wheeled horse carriage was traveling quickly in the dark, quiet street. They arrived at Zutland Street in only 12 minutes. Wait for me here, 5 minutes. It won't be more than 5 minutes, Klein emphasized. He put on his top hat, grabbed his cane, and got off the carriage. As the carriage driver was charging based on time instead of distance, the driver didn't mind waiting. Going up the stairs, Klein arrived at the Blockthorn Security Company and knocked on the door. Within 10 seconds, the door was opened wide. Leonard Mistel appeared before him in a vest and a shirt. You're not on duty tonight, Leonard pointed out, looking surprised to see him. Klein was only on guard duty once a week for the Janus Gate. They maintained a regular schedule for the rest of the time. As for emergencies that happened at night, they would be dealt with would be dealt with by the sleepless who enjoyed the night. However, only getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day can cause baldness and memory loss. Whenever he thought about this, Klein couldn't help but ridicule Captain Dunsmith in his mind. I have something to report, he answered simply. There's a mission? Leonard asked casually, moving aside. When Klein entered the reception hall, he saw Dunn coming out in his black trench coat. His grey eyes were dark as usual. Captain, I came across an incident involving the supernaturals. Give me the detail. Give me the details, Dunn asked directly. Klein recounted the whole story from earlier and reported the steps that he took to deal with it. So I think there is need to investigate Hanas Vincent. Back then, he believed that since the evil entity was invited by the magic mirror divination, hasn't hadn't caused a disaster, and there was no indication that he was in extreme danger. That meant that the entity probably still needed more time. It didn't want to awaken or possess Selena ahead of time. Therefore, as long as its goals were not exposed, the evil entity chose to observe the situation. Under such circumstances, it wasn't hard for Elizabeth to trick Selena to head to the entrance of the bedroom. You've done well. You seized the opportunity before the evil spirit fully materialized to possess her body completely. Dunn lifted his head lightly and said, let us take care of the follow up investigation. You can return home to rest. Lion heaved a sigh of relief and chortled. I thought you would make this my initiation mission and make me complete it alone. From the incantation that Elizabeth provided him, Anas Vincent was certainly dangerous. That's because there's already an initiation mission for you. The desultory, a new word, Leonard chuckled by his side. What? Klein was shocked. Dunn smirked and explained in a soothing voice. At around 7 tonight, the police station referred us a case. From initial assessments, there doesn't seem to be any danger or urgency, so it was decided that you would complete it on your own tomorrow. All right, don't ask about the case. Rest well tonight and move your day off to Tuesday or Wednesday. Captain, doing that only affects my sleep. Plus, Monday afternoon is when the tarot gathering takes place. Do I need to send a postponement notification to the justice and the hangman? To the hang to justice and the hangman? Clive shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then he bade farewell and left. Exiting the stairway, he suddenly sensed something. He lifted his head to look towards the carriage they had hired. He only saw Melissa looking at him silently through the window. When they made eye contact, Melissa suddenly looked away and sat properly. The corner of Clive's mouth twitched, and he got into the carriage pretending nothing had happened. Under the crimson moon and pure night sky, the carriage moved quickly down one street after another. When they returned home, Klein yielded the bathroom to Benson for his shower while he went to Melissa's bedroom and knocked twice. Melissa, who was planning to use the other bathroom, opened the door and looked at her brother suspiciously. Melissa, do you have any questions you would like to ask? I know you do, Klein asked straightforwardly. Don't just observe me in silence. Melissa's lips trembled and she creased her eyebrows as she spoke. Klein, what did you do to Elizabeth? She seemed a bit off. And later on, Selina started acting very strange too. Klein had prepared his reply. Do you know that Elizabeth and Selina are mysticism enthusiasts? Yeah, but I don't like it. I don't think there is anything that can't be explained in this world. Melissa asked seriously after being momentarily taken aback. Anything that seems unexplainable is due to the fact that knowledge we have grasped is insufficient. Yeah, I think so too, Klein echoed her sentimentals guiltily. I once thought so too, until I successfully courted death. He coughed lightly and continued. Mysticism involves Hermes, the language used for mysticism involves Hermes, the language specifically used used specifically for ancient worship ceremonies and prayers. Elizabeth knew that I am good at it. It is within a historian's domain after all. So she asked me about the pronunciation of corresponding words and their actual meaning. Melissa nodded lightly, signifying her acceptance of her brother's explanation. It went according to her understanding of both parties. As for why Elizabeth and Selena became weird later on, I have no idea about the actual reasons. Client removed himself from the picture first and then said, "But I can make a guess." I managed You managed to guess it? Melissa blurted out in shock. Client lifted his hands and patted his lips. I could guess from the contents of what Elizabeth said. The few Hermes words were related to divination, as well as the worshipping of evil entities. Yes, when Selena did magic mirror divination, did she recite in Hermes? He proactively brought that up in order to remind his sister to keep her guards against similar situation. It would be even better if she could cut off contact with Selena and Elizabeth. Yes, Melissa replied after a delay. I think I understand why Elizabeth and Selena were acting strange. Then Client asked deliberately. As Selena's magic mirror divination involved a wicked, illegal belief, perhaps Elizabeth found an opportunity to criticize and correct Selena's mistake after she clarified with me the actual meaning of the Hermes that Selena had used. I think so. Melissa didn't doubt this conclusion because she had made the same deduction herself. Client let out a breath of relief upon seeing she had successfully directed the flow of conversation. In the future, it's best if you avoided Selena to put her beliefs in the orthodox. In the future, it's best if you advised Selena to put her beliefs in the orthodox. Then he tapped four spot on his chest, just like a priest. Yes, I will, Melissa replied, sounding determined. And don't tell Elizabeth and Serena about our deduction or about the things that I have said. I actually promised Elizabeth not to tell you, Klein emphasized. Okay, Melissa nodded lightly. On Monday morning at 8 in the Blackthorn Security Company, Klein took off his hat and greeted Roseanne and Brett. After exchanging a few words, he entered Captain Dunsmith's office. He pushed the door open and looked around. He suddenly had a shock because Dunn's face was pretty pale and his grey eyes looked clouded without their usual darkness. What happened? Hannes Vincent? Klein asked in concern and shock. Dunn rubbed his forehead, took a sip of coffee, and replied with a bitter smile. Hannes Vincent is dead. Oh. Who killed him ahead of time? Klein sat before Dunsmith with his cane in his hand. Dunn didn't answer immediately but sighed. Leonard and I went to look for Hannes Vincent last night. As his usual behavior didn't show any unusual signs and there was nothing odd about his house, I decided to enter his dreams to look for clues. In his dream, in his dream, his eyes showed fear as Dunn repeated himself twice. That was when he said, "In his dream, I saw a cross, a huge cross, one that blotted out the sky. On the huge cross, there was a naked man nailed to it with black nails. His arms and legs were pinned with his arms extended outwards. He was hung upside down and his head hung low like a chandelier. There was strips of blood stains on his body. Upon seeing such a scene, I lost consciousness. I left Hannah's Vincent's dream, and when I woke up, Leonard told me that Hannah's died in his sleep. A huge cross hung upside down, and the man covered in blood stains. It's similar to some of the stories of the true creator that some of the hidden organizations believe in, but there are considerable references too. Klein made a deduction in suspicion. A few hidden organizations that believe the true creator had only appeared in the last 2 or 3 centuries, such as the Aurora Order and the Iron and Blood Cross Order. However, similar such depictions had never disappeared over the past 1,000 years. Dunn rubbed his forehead again. We'll follow up on this. As for you, go ahead and complete your initiation mission first. Okay. Chapter 89, A Simple Mission. Lion nodded and said, "All right, but I still don't know what my mission is." "Nothing dangerous. I haven't seen any signs of danger at the very least," Dunn emphasized. "This is a case which was referred to us by Golden Indus Police Department. The famous the famous philanthropist Sir Dewey has been experiencing unusual harassments over the past month, be it his bodyguards, the security guards he has employed, or the police. None of them have been able to find the culprit. Inspector Toll, who is in charge of this case, suspects that it involves beyond their powers and thus handed the case over to us. I saw Sir Deville at the library the other day and noticed that he was feeling down and lethargic. So it was a result of being harassed?" Klein knitted his brows and asked, "What kind of harassment is it?" "There hasn't been any physical harm inflicted yet, thus the harassment wouldn't be considered dangerous. Sir Deville hears moans and cries every night, no matter where he is, be it Tingen or not. This has affected his sleep quality negatively." Dunn flipped the notes in his hands. "He has seen a psychiatrist and has asked his butlers and servants to confirm that it was not an illusion. Having confirmed that it wasn't a hallucination, thus it is suspected that someone is harassing him." Closing the file, Dunn looked up at Klein. "Change into your probationary inspector uniform in the break room. Then meet Inspector Toll, who is in charge of this case at the shooting club. He will provide you with more details." "Probationary inspector uniform?" Klein asked instinctively. Dunn rubbed his forehead and smiled. "Half of our salary comes from the police department, and the title of probationary inspector doesn't merely belong in the records. When you met Leonard and I for the first time, we were also wearing uniforms. This is a perk held by fully official members." "Yes, the perks, as Emperor Roselle would call it. Unfortunately, I can't wear it as a casual outfit. Otherwise, I'd be able to have another spare outfit when my clothes are being washed." Client picked up his cane and bade farewell before leaving the captain's office. He headed towards the break room and saw the black and white checkered uniform, complete with leather boots, placed on the table. The uniform peak cap was embroidered with the logo of the police department, two crossed swords, and a crown. Located on the shoulder was a black and white epaulette, epaulette with a shimmering silver star. "This is a probationary inspector uniform?" Client glanced at the uniform and noticed a string of numbers against the silver stars. 06254. He had some understanding of the police rank structure in the Lowen Kingdom. He knew that those at the top were the minister and the chief secretary of the police force. Under them were the respective commissioners, deputy commissioners, assistant commissioners of the various police departments. Those in the middle were superintendents and inspectors, while those at the very bottom were sergeants and constables. After closing the door, Client took off his suit and hat before changing into the uniform. He hung his suit up and left the bedroom. Sorry, left the room. He made his way into the clerk's office and looked at himself using the full body mirror that Roseanne brought to him. The young man in the mirror had black hair with gentle brown eyes. The uniform on his body accentuated him with a heroic spirit. "Not bad," Klein praised himself narcissistically. He left his cane in the office and left the Blackthorn Security Company. Inside his pockets were a full set of equipment ranging from weapons to his police badge. At the hall of the shooting club, Klein met Inspector Toll immediately since he was the only one in the police uniform. Of course, there's me too, Klein thought. There were two silver stars and the epaulettes on Inspector Toll's uniform. His clothes were propped up by his stomach, and he had a thick blonde mustache. His frame was tall but not imposing. Perhaps it was imposing in the past. Moretti? Klein Moretti? Inspector Toll noticed Klein and welcomed him with a smile. Hello, Inspector Toll. I believe that you have the right person. Klein replied amicably. Then, following his memories, he raised his right arm, keeping his fingers straight and tight before saluting. Toll chuckled. I can tell that you'll be a young man who is easy to get along with. That's good. Shall we head to Sir Dewey's place now? Even though he was a higher rank than Klein, the tone in his query was obviously friendly. No problem, Klein thought for a moment before he said, You can fill me on the details of the case in the carriage. Sure, Toll stroked his thick blond beard and guided Klein out of the shooting club. They boarded a carriage which was stopped at the other side of the road. There was a two cross swords and a crown police emblem on the carriage, and it came with a personal carriage driver. Sir Dewey is a believer of the goddess, so we referred the case to you, Toll said quickly as he sat down. I know, the fine knight is a common figure on the covers of newspapers and magazines. Klein flashed a friendly smile. Toll picked up the docket before him and removed the seal before taking out the materials. As he flipped through them, he explained, Regardless, even if you are being aware of it, I need to provide you with the detailed briefing. Sir Dewey is one of the richest tycoon of Stingon City. He built his career beginning with a lead and porcelain factory. He now he has now expanded to steel, coal, shipping, banking, and bonds. He's also a great philanthropist that has been praised by the king, having set up the Deweyville Charity Foundation, the Deweyville Trust, and the Deweyville Library. He was also knighted 5 years ago. If he were willing to run for mayor, I don't think anyone in the Dingan city would contest with him. But Backland is his goal. He wants to become a member of the parliament. We once suspected that the harassment might be related to this, but we have no clues to this date. Klein nodded silently and slightly and said, We can't rule out that possibility, but there's nothing to confirm that suspicion as of now. Toll didn't dwell on this point. He continued, From the 6th of last month, Sir Dewey has heard painful, skin numbing moans every night when he sleeps, akin to a patient's fight for his life. He has checked the surrounding rooms multiple times, but he hasn't found anything unusual. His butlers and servants have also confirmed that they heard such sounds, but it is simply softer for them. In the beginning, Sir Dewey believed that this matter would pass quickly and didn't pay much attention to it. But the moans became more and more frequent, to the point of occasionally happening during the day. There was even an addition of heart-wrenching cries. This has made Sir Dewey lose sleep time and time again. He had no choice but to leave Tingen to his villa his villa in the villages. But it was to no avail. The moans and cries persisted. Similarly, the phenomena persisted even in Backland, just that it wasn't as serious. He employed security guards to check surroundings, but they didn't find any clues. Our preliminary investigations also came up with nothing. Sir Deweyville, who had been tortured for more than a month, is on the brink of collapse. He visited psychiatrists time and time again, but was unable to have his problems resolved. He told us if this problem was not solved within a month, he would leave Tingen and head to Backland. He believes that there would be people who can help him there. After listening to Toll's expression, Klein quickly analyzed and came up with few possibilities. He offended a beyonder and is suffering from a curse? No, if he was suffering from a curse, the butlers and servants in his house wouldn't hear the same things. There's a beyonder with unknown motives hidden amongst his servants and bodyguards. But the problem stems from the point that there has been no requests made of Sir Dewey over the past month. Perhaps Sir Dewey accidentally came in contact with some vengeful evil spirit, though that possibility cannot be ruled out. The carriage entered the Golden Indus Burrow while Klein was still deep in thought. It stopped at the door of Sir Dewey's house. A steel fence surrounded a lush garden. There were two statues by the side of the hollowed metal gates, a magnificent fountain that showered a marble structure with water, two expansive story building, an expansive two-story building, as well as a path wide enough to fit three carriages. Even the knight's house only two carriages high. The newspapers reported that Backlund is experimenting with building 10-story apartments. Klein got off the carriage and saw a sergeant with three chevron stripes walking over briskly. He looked at Klein and saluted. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Klein nodded with a smile. Toll smiled. This is Sergeant Gate. You can tell him if you need anything. This is Probationary Inspector Moretti, a history and psychology expert from the police department. Toll introduced Klein to Gate. I don't deserve such a title. Klein felt a little embarrassed. After the greetings, Gate pointed to the two-story building behind the fountain and said, Sir Deweyville is waiting for us. All right. Klein caressed the revolver at his waist. That was his best bet against an enemy. Since he was in a police uniform, he could put his revolver in the holster at his hip, making it easier to draw it. As they spoke, the trio made their way down the path around the fountain and arrived at the door. But then the door was already opened by a servant who was waiting politely at the side. Klein pretended to adjust his hat. He tapped on his glabella to activate his spirit vision, entering the house. The square-faced Dewey was massaging his forehead in the hall. He was clearly in low spirits. His blond hair and blue eyes were either dry or dull, as though he had aged considerably in the last 5 years. By at least 5 years. Sir Dewey, good morning. Lion, Toll, and Gate bowed at the same time. Sir Dewey stood up and forced out a smile. Good morning, officers. I hope you can resolve what has been causing me distress. At that moment, Klein squinted and slightly knitted his brows. Other than his low spirits, Klein couldn't find any other problem with Sir Dewey. That's odd, he thought for a moment before saying, Sir, in which room did you first hear the moans? My bedroom. Sir Dewey shook his head. Can we take a look? Inquired Klein. Haven't you checked it many times? The middle-aged butler interrupted from the side. It was clear that he didn't notice that Klein was a partner of the kind-hearted soul that had not pocketed the money that he picked up. Klein smiled composed. Those were my colleagues, not me. Sir, this is an expert sent by the police agency, Toll said, taking the opportunity to introduce him. Sir Dewey looked at the young expert and said, All right, Cullen, take him to my room. Sir, I hope that you will come with us. Klein said seriously. Dewey hesitated for a few seconds before saying, If that can solve the problem. He grabbed his cane as he spoke. He made his way feebly towards the entrance with the butler, Cullen, and several guards beside him, ready to support him if needed. Klein surveyed the surroundings as he followed behind them silently. One step, two steps, three steps. They arrived at the second story and entered the master bedroom. Klein didn't have time to survey the surroundings when the hair on his body stood on their end. This was the feedback from his spiritual perception. Chapter 90 Findings by Sight. Sir Dewey's bedroom was larger than the living room and dining room of Klein's house combined. It was partitioned into a place for bed, a living space, and a changing room, a bathroom, a study desk, and bookshelves. The furnishings were exquisite and the details were extravagant. But to Klein, the light seemed dimmer and the temperature was several degrees colder than the outside. At the same time, he seemed to hear the sounds of sobbing and moaning as though one was putting on a last-ditch struggle. Klein was in a trance, and everything suddenly turned to normal. The sunlight shone brightly through the window and poured over the entire bedroom. The temperature was reasonable, neither too high or low. The surrounding policemen, bodyguards, and butler were quiet. No one spoke. This, he looked sideways at the classic yet luxurious bed. He felt that there were a pair of blurry eyes lingering in the shadows like the moths that fearlessly stayed around gas lamps. Taking a few steps closer, Klein lost the earlier images from his spirit vision. Not a standard wraith or an evil spirit. What is it exactly? Klein frowned and recalled the mysticism knowledge that he had been learning all this time. From what he had seen, the mission would not be easy if it was passed to a corpse collector, grave digger, or a spirit medium. It was obviously not within his domain of expertise. Holding back his urge to use divination as an investigative approach, Klein looked around slowly to look for other traces to confirm a few guesses in his mind. Inspector, Sir Dewey hesitated and asked, "Did you discover anything?" "If it were that easy, I believe my colleague wouldn't have waited until now," Klein replied, glancing at the philanthropist subconsciously. Just as he planned to retract his gaze, he suddenly saw that there was a faint white human figure reflected behind Sir Dewey in the mirror behind him. No, there were many figures overlapping each other, resulting in a wide, distorted figure. The figure flashed by, and Klein seemed to hear faint sobbing. He let out a breath to ease his nerve, having almost drawn his gun out of fright. Heightened spiritual perception with spirit vision will one day scare me senseless. Klein tried relaxing his tense nerves by joking around before redirecting his focus back onto Sir Dewey. This time he saw something different. Now that he was in the bedroom, Sir Dewey had a faint and twisted figure shimmering around him. It even dimmed the lightning of that area. Every flash was accompanied by an illusory cry and moan that could hardly be detected by an ordinary person. Hardly audible for ordinary person under ordinary circumstance? Is it because it's daytime? Klein nodded as he thought. He had an initial judgment of this case. It was resentment that was haunting Sir Dewey. It was the remnant spirituality that resulted from unresolved emotions before a human's death. If such feelings of resentment stayed in this world over a period of time, they would become a terrifying, wrathful spirit after becoming stronger. However, Sir Dewey was a famous philanthropist. Even Benson, who was a picky person, was in awe of him. Why would he be bogged down by resentment of the dead? Is he actually two-faced? Could it be the means of a beyonder with nefarious intentions? Klein guessed the possibilities suspiciously. After some thought, he looked towards Dewey and asked, "Honorable sir, I have a few questions." "Please ask." Sir Dewey sat down wearily. Klein organized his thoughts and asked, "When you leave here to go to a new place, such as the village or backland, do you temporarily get at least a half night's worth of peace before the situation resumes and gradually worsens? Even when you sleep during the daytime, are you able to hear the moaning and sobbing sounds?" Dewey's half closed eyes suddenly widened as his deep blue eyes were suddenly beaming with hope. "Yes, did you find the root of the problem?" Only then did he realize that due to his extended period of insomnia and his poor mental state, he had completely forgotten to inform the police about such an important clue. Seeing that Klein's question had uncovered something useful, Inspector Toll relaxed. He knew that the Nighthawk had found a clue. Sergeant Gate was surprised and curious too. He couldn't help but look closely at the psychological expert Klein. It coincided with traits of gradual entanglement and the fear of accumulation. Having received the feedback, Klein had basically confirmed the cause. Then he had two ways of helping Sir Dewey shake off the burden. One was to set up an altar directly around the man and remove the resentment of the dead entirely using ritualistic magic. Second option was to use other mysticism measures to find the root of the problem and solve it from there. Taking into consideration the rule of preventing commoners from learning beyond their powers to the best of his abilities, Client planned on first attempting the second method. Only if it failed would he pray to the goddess. Sir, yours is a physiological illness, a mental problem. He spoke nonsense with absolute seriousness while looking at Dewey. Sir Dewey knitted his brows and asked in reply, "Are you telling me that I am a mental patient and that I need to enter an asylum?" "No, nothing that serious. Actually, most people have psychological problems to one degree or another." Client casually comforted him. "Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a psychological expert from the Ava County Police." Psychological expert? Dewey and his butler looked at Inspector Toll, who they were familiar with. Toll nodded seriously and confirmed that it was true. "All right, what do you need of me for my treatment? Besides, I don't understand why my butler, bodyguards, and my servants will hear the sobbing and moaning as well." Dewey held his walking stick with both hands, looking confused. Client replied professionally, "I'll explain to you after it's resolved. Please tell your butler, your servant, and your bodyguards to leave. Inspector Toll, Sergeant Gate, please leave as well. I need a quiet environment to begin the initial treatment. A treatment with magic." Inspector Toll added in his heart and nodded as Sir Dewey. Dewey fell silent for more than 10 seconds before saying, "Cullen, take them to the living room on the second floor." "Yes, sir." Butler Cullen didn't retort since the request was made by a police officer, probationary inspector, and a psychological expert. After watching them leave the room one after another and closing the door behind them, Client looked at Dewey, who had dark blonde hair and blue eyes, and said, "Sir, please lie down on your bed, relax, and try to sleep." "All right." Dewey hung his coat and hat on the clothes rack before walking slowly to the side of the bed and laid down. Client drew all curtains, turning the room dark. He took off his pendant and quickly used the spirit pendulum to determine any dangers. Then he on the rocking chair near the end of the bed, traced a spherical light in his mind, and entered cogitation. He allowed the world of spirituality to extend beyond his eyes. Then he leaned against the back of the chair and fell into deep sleep, allowing for his astral projection to make contact with the external world. He was using the technique of dream divination to let himself be in the spiritual environment like he was dreaming, so as to communicate with each and every resentment that plagues Sir Dewey. Only communication would be able to give him an answer and solve the problem. A sad sob reverberated in Client's ear, and he saw the white translucent figures were floating around him. A painful groan echoed as Client, who barely regained his mental processes, extended his right arms and touched one of them. Suddenly, the figures swarmed at him like moths darting towards a fire. The image before Client's eyes suddenly turned blurry, and his brain seemed to be cleaved into two. Half of his mind was calmly observing, while other half saw a mirror. In the mirror, there was a young girl dressed in worker garb. She looked strong and fit as she walked in the dust-covered factory, while her head throbbed in pain. Her eyesight occasionally turned blurry, and her body became skinnier by the day. She seemed to hear someone calling her Charlotte, and the voice said that she had a hysterical illness. Hysterical illness? She looked towards the mirror and saw that she had a blue line on her gum. She had a faint blue line on her gum. The mirror's view switched, and Client saw another girl called Mary. The mirror's view switched, and Client saw another girl called Mary. She too walked into the lead factory, young and lively. Suddenly, half of her face started twitching, followed by her arm and leg of the same side. You have epilepsy, she heard someone say while her whole body was convulsing. As she twitched and fell, the intensity increased before she finally lost consciousness. There was another girl, and she was depressed. She was walking around the street in a daze to the point of having speech impediment. She had a very bad headache and she had a blue line on her gums. She would also converse from time to time. She met a doctor, and doctor said, Lafayette, this is a result of lead poisoning. The doctor looked at her with pity and saw her convulse again. She twitched con- continuously, and doctor saw her eyes had lost all their light. Many images appeared before Klein, and he remained immersed within them and calmly observed. Suddenly, he understood the plight of the girls. The female workers had been in extended contact with white lead. They had all died of lead poisoning as a result of long time exposure to dust and the powder. Sir Dewey had a lead factory under his name and also two porcelain factories. All of them hired comparatively cheaper female workers. Clients saw all of that in silence and felt that there was something that had not still been clarified. Such death resentment was insignificant. They could not affect reality or have any effect on the will even when accumulated, unless unless there was a more powerful and stubborn resentment that had united them all. Then he saw another girl. The girl was no more than 18 years old, but she was glazing the porcelain in the factory. Haley, how are you doing lately? Do you still have a headache? If it gets too serious, remember to inform me. Sir Dewey has enforced a rule that people with severe headaches cannot continue being in contact with lead and must leave the factory, an elderly lady asked with concern. Haley touched her forehead and replied with a smile, Just a little, I'm okay. Tell me tomorrow if it gets any worse, the elderly lady exhorted. Haley agreed. When she returned home, she massaged her forehead from time to time. She saw that her parents and brother had returned, but their faces looked hopeless. Your father and brother lost their jobs, her mother said as she wiped her tears. Her father and brother hung their heads low and muttered, We'll try to get some work at the harbor. But we don't even have bread money for the day after tomorrow. Maybe we'll need to move to Lower Street. Haley's mother looked at her with reddened eyes. When are you getting your pay? It's 10 solely, right? Haley massaged her forehead again and again. Yes, Saturday. Saturday. She didn't say anything else and remained as quiet as usual. She returned to the factory the next day and told her supervisor that her headache had recovered and she felt fine. She smiled and walked 5 kilometers back and forth for work daily. She massaged her head more and more frequently. You haven't found another job? Haley couldn't help but ask her father and brother while looking at the soup which was boiling with black bread. Her father said in frustration, The economy is in recession. Many places are retrenching. Even the harbor jobs are sporadic. I could only get 3 soldi and 7 pence a week. Haley sighed and fell into her usual silence. However, she hid her left hand that was twitching suddenly. On the second day, she walked to work again. The sun was shining brightly, and the street grew busier and busier with pedestrians. Suddenly, she started convulsing all over. She fell to the side of the road, foam spewing from her mouth. She looked into the sky, and her gaze turned to a blur. She saw people walking past and others getting close. She saw a carriage pass by with Dewey family emblem with a white dove with its spread wings as if ready to take off. She tried hard to open her mouth, but she couldn't make a sound. So she didn't say a thing, quite as ever. But the difference this time was that she was dead. There's a footnote about the original inspiration for this. These girls come from Jack London's People of the Abyss. Okay, we'll stop here for today. That's quite sad. Right. Thank you for listening. See you all next time. Have a nice day. Bye bye.